Hello, lovely people out there in the chessboard. It's Anna here with your weekly dose of Middlegame strategy. You know that last week I was in Madrid for a couple of days because of an event. I love tennis. I hope that I can show you this picture. I think those of you who follow me on Twitter must have seen it. Definitely you have seen it. If you're not following me, follow me on my Facebook, follow me on my Twitter. I also have an Instagram, but I barely use it. So Facebook, Twitter, that's where you can follow me. And I just wanted to say that it was a really cool event, so I recommend it to everybody, the Mutua Madrid Open or any live tennis event. I also love football, so tennis, football, all these sports, I love watching them live. Please let me know in the chat which sports do you love, because I want to know more about you guys, about my students. So if you are watching now on Chess24, please let me know in the chat below. And if this is a replay for you, then you can comment on my YouTube video. I will check all those comments, read them, and see what's your favorite sport. What do you think about tennis, football, any other sport? And if you think that they have anything to do with chess, because I do believe that tennis and chess have a lot in common. So let me know if you agree with me. But today we are not here because of tennis, but we will study chess, and we will study a lot of chess because, first of all, we will recap everything that we have learned about opposite side castling. Then we will see a new model game on a different breakthrough. Once again a pawn storm, but a different kind of pawn storm. And at 7 Central European time, so in 56 minutes, we have a thematic tournament. You should sign up for the thematic tournament. It's gonna be once again with my live commentary, so I'll be giving you my personal advice on how to improve your chess. We'll be practicing one of the positions from these videos, and it will be unrated so that the person who plays the inferior position will not lose any rating. It's just for the sake of practicing everything that you have learned with me. So please sign up for the thematic tournament. I'll paste now the link to the chat. I hope I can, because you know how clumsy I am. So this is the tournament. Make sure that you sign up for it before then 7 o'clock. So let's start bringing up a chessboard, because I think we do need it. I'll close now my Facebook. That's not necessary now. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and also Chess24 on Twitter, Facebook, the website in general, and the app. It's very useful to have it on your phone, the Chess24 app. And now let's go for the chessboard that I've just mentioned, because clumsy I am, but I think I managed. That's our chessboard, and you already know this game. Why you know it? Because we have studied it, and I think you guessed all the brilliant moves here that Vichy played with white against Timman. So this was one of the games that we have seen, and you know about this pawn storm. But let's just in general recap what we know about opposite side castling. So I will give you 1 minute, or maybe half a minute, to think about the general characteristics of a middle game position with opposite side castling. So no moves, nothing concrete. Let me know in general, how do we play when we have our king on one flank and the opponent has his king on the other flank? What are the plans? How shall we play? And I'll give you some time for this. Alright, I've seen some really good tips there on Chess24's chat. You guys are great, you remember everything. And yes, this is how we play, so I will mention some of the comments. First of all, be active. Very good comment. You should play active and you should be quick. That's a second really important thing. Maybe I should put it on the first place because being active and quick, but mainly quick and active, the quickest the better, because for instance in this position, without mentioning any moves, we are playing with the white pieces. Your king is on b1 and you see that those black pieces are trying to mate your king. So if we are slow, if we start maneuvering, you know, those slow kind of knight maneuvers, going back and forth with the pieces, this isn't the position for that, because the opponent will launch his attack faster than you. So time is very important in opposite side castling. You should be quicker than the opponent, be as quick as possible and as active as possible. But how can we be, wow, I managed to say that, how can we be quick? Well, you can gain some speed by sacrificing. So it doesn't mean that you're gonna sacrifice a queen just for the sake of time, but it does mean that we usually don't care about a pawn or two. So it's okay to give up a pawn or two for the sake of speeding up your attack. Pawn storms are also very typical, and these are the model games that we have seen about pawn storms, for instance, Wishes game, where you go forward with those pawns against the opponent's king. So no, we are not touching the pawns in front of our king, we are pushing the pawns against the opponent's king. Why do we do that? Because we want to open files. So opposite side castling, quick, active, launch an attack, and with pawns, because this is the way of making advantage of not having our king as well on the king side. So if you had your king on the king side, you don't want to push your king side pawns against the opponent's king, which is also on the king side. If we are on the same flank, usually you don't want to touch your pawns because you need some bodyguards around your king, and those are the pawns. So if there's opposite side castling, it's the other way around. You can push those pawns, and you should, because you need to open files. And how can you open files? By exchanging pawns. So that's why we push those pawns. We want to see as many open lines as possible. Files, diagonals, ranks, anything that you can open it. Especially here in this position, the G and H files are those that you want to see open. Imagine you can take the G5 and the H5 pawn away from the board. That's great. I wish I could give those pawns up just like this, taking them off of the board. That's why we go for those breakthroughs. That's why we learn about pawn storms. So these are very important features. Be quick, be active, launch a pawn storm. Don't mind so much material, because many times you will give up a pawn or two pawns, and many times also you give up pieces. So you might sacrifice a knight, you might sacrifice two bishops, you might sacrifice a rook for the sake of the attack. Don't go crazy sacrificing, but sacrifice by calculating the sacrifice. Before you sacrifice something, just make sure that it works. But sacrificing a pawn or two is just really normal. Be quicker than your opponent, and if you have to, you will also defend. Yes, many of you have said that sometimes we need to use a tempo or two tempi to make some prophylactic moves. For instance, when you castle queenside, many times you will use one move for placing the king on b1 or on b8, because that's where the king is safer. So yes, sometimes you should also think about prophylaxis and preventing the opponent's threats against your king. I think that was a pretty good general analysis of opposite side castling. Thanks to you guys. So brilliant job here in the chat on Chess24. And now let's see these two examples that we have seen. Well, two examples, we have seen more examples, but let's just mention quickly that we have already learned about the pawn storms. Well, here you see the pawn is already on g5, the other pawn on h5, and then we push g6. So this is how we want to break through. In this game, that was the correct move. We want to open the g and h5. This was the way. And also, if the opponent doesn't care about that pawn, many times you will just push h6 as well. And we have described this position in previous sessions, so I will not go into detail now, but just please remember that this move even though it's tempting to give a check, is many times not the best because the opponent can try to use this pawn as a shield. Remember the Fischer game that we have seen, Fischer-Spassky. So there Bobby managed to get rid of those h-pawns, but it was not that easy to do so. He played brilliantly, so yes, that's one of the best model games I know about these kind of positions. But if you have the opportunity of pushing h6 and not capturing on h7, that's better, because in this position black cannot prevent the opening of files. So you will either open the h file or the g file or both. So this was about the g6 h6 breakthrough, and we have also seen another way of breaking through. And in this game, for instance, Nair Visocin that we saw last week, the correct move was h6. So pawn storms don't always mean that you push all your pawns. Pawn storms mean that yes, you storm through, you go ahead with a very quick pace against the opponent's king, but you need to think about which square you want to weaken, which files you want to open. So in this position, the correct plan for white isn't g4, g5, g6, because it's too slow. If we do that, the opponent will start a counterattack. You can play b5, d4 sometimes. Careful about the center. The center is so important. If the opponent can counterattack in the center, that can be painful, so make sure that you control the center. We don't have time for g4, g5, g6 in this position, but we do have time, and we should play h6, because in this position there are no dark squared bishops, which means that if we manage to weaken this g7 square, the f6 square, these are holes in the opponent's position. So imagine you land there with the queen. Dum, dum, mate. So for instance, in positions without dark squared bishops, it's a good idea to weaken the dark squares. Or if the light squares bishop is missing, then we will go for the h7 square. Or if there's no knight on f6, then once again that would protect the h7 square, then you will attack the h7 square. It really depends on the position where the pieces are, what can you carry out as quickly as possible. So in this position, weakening the dark squares with h6 was the best move, and that's what Nair played. Talking about pushing pawns and not always pushing all those pawns, today we will see a different breakthrough, and it won't be about g6 nor about h6. It's a really nice Ponomarev game. I love this game. I hope that you will also like it. And as usual, we will just go through the opening very quickly. This is neither of my wonderful colleague Sopika Goramishvili has a great video series on Chess24 about the Najdorf, so if you want to play it with the black pieces, you should definitely check that out. Today we will not discuss the opening. Actually, we never discuss it because this is a middle game show, remember that. So yeah, these moves might be weird for those of you who don't play e4 with white, or if you don't play the Najdorf with the black pieces. Yeah, today my tongue is tongue twisting, all kinds of weird pronunciation things, but I'll try to focus on how I move my lips and not only how I move the pieces on the chessboard. So I hope you can understand me. After castle queenside, we are almost there. We are almost at the position that I want to discuss, because here it is pretty clear that after b5, black will want to attack on the queen side, and we will want to do something about this king on e8. So it either remains in the center, in that case we want to open the center and we will try to attack this king in the center, or if he castles kingside, which will happen in this game, then we will see how to attack the king on the king side in this position. So a3 was played here, and this is still theory, but I want to talk about this move a little bit, because we have learned that if you advance the pawns where the opponent is trying to create a breakthrough, that's not so recommendable, because it means that you create a square where the opponent will manage to exchange pawns. So in one move, black can push his pawn to b4, and that would mean that we have to do something about this pawn and we will have to capture it. But the way to prepare that would be playing a5 and then b4. So a3 is actually a good move in this position, because it is very, very difficult for black to play a5. Simply because we are attacking his b5 pawn with 3, 4, 4. Actually, yeah, still 4 pieces. I wanted to move the queen away, but yeah, 4 pieces attacking the b5 pawn. That's why he cannot push a5 almost ever. And if he cannot push a5, he cannot prepare b4, at least not by exchanging on b4 and capturing on b4 with a pawn. So that's what we want to avoid. a5, b4, a takes, the a file opens, there's an annoying pawn on b4. That would be horrible, but we play a3 because it's in this position, it's difficult, very difficult to play a5. So in this position, you should play a3, but in other positions, imagine that you are not attacking the b5 pawn. It would be a mistake because if the opponent manages to play a5, b4 very quickly, then all you did was helping him. So in cases where you cannot do anything about the opponent's for advancing his pawns, just keep the pawns where they are, so it will take for a longer time for him to create a breakthrough. He has to make a lot more moves than pushing the pawn to b4, but here a3 good. I think I discussed this in depth, so let's move on. Bishop b7, g4, bishop e7, and now this is the first moment when I want you to think, because bishop g2 is the natural move and it's a good move. It will transpose to the game, but here already Ponomarev played a move which prepares the attack on the king side. So we have learned a model game that was similar in a way to this position. I will not tell you why it was similar. I think you should remember it. So let me know, how do you think we will proceed on the king side? How can we prepare an attack on the king side? What do we move? Where do we move it? And then what's the plan? Time to think. I've seen the correct solution by only one of the users, because this is not that normal, that natural move. Bishop h4, Jasper has mentioned that move. Congratulations, Jasper, and everybody else who might have thought about this move but was too shy to write me about the move. So bishop h4 is what Ponomarev played here. Bishop g2, as I said, is a good and natural move. It will transpose to the game, but bishop h4 is important because the bishop on g5 is disturbing us. So yes, it's an active piece. We have developed that bishop. Normally we like bishops on g5. Normally they pin pieces, they pin the knight on f6, but not here. There's this bishop on e7, so there's not much use of this bishop if we just leave it on g5. It is only disturbing our pawn advance. We want to push this g pawn to g5, and that's where the bishop is. We have seen another model game, and that's why I was talking about the previous session where the pawn was still on f2, so we had the chance to bring back the bishop to e3. And that was the correct move in that game. If you don't remember it, please check the previous session and you will see what I refer to. But here we cannot go to e3, so it's a bit weird that we should play bishop h4, but it's very logical if you realize that all you want to do is play g5, because we want to push those pawns. And if in this position we are already threatening g5, let's check if we do. After g5, where could the black knight go? It doesn't have many squares. It would need to go to g8. So yeah, that's horrible. That means that we are threatening to push g5 right now, not only because we want to attack on the king side, but also because this f6 knight has no squares to go. The other knight is taking away the square on d7, so black has to move this knight away, or he has to go h6. h6 is what Vasil Lagraf played in this position in one of his games, so I believe it's the best continuation here. If you want to study the Najdorf, you can definitely learn a lot from Maxim's games. He's an expert on the Najdorf. So that's a good option here after bishop h4. Also, knight b6 was played in other games, and well, the idea is that now you have a square for the knight, so in case of g5, you can go to d7 with the knight. It's a lot better than placing it on g8. You don't want to go to g8 ever. So yeah, we need to free the square for the knight, and this one is heading to c4. So I like this knight b6 idea, but maybe first h6 and then knight b6. What happened in the game was knight c5. The idea is the same. You free the d7 square for the knight, and at the same time here you are attacking the e4 pawn. So you might think that this is the best reaction by black, but it just looks like that, because yeah, the pawn is hanging on e4, but we can simply defend it by playing bishop g2. And now there won't be much harmony between the knights, because this knight would need to be on c4. You can't place it there, so you would have to come with this knight, but that takes a long time. So I think that if you want to move the knights, then you should think about heading to this square. If the opponent's king is on the queen side, whether it's white or black, placing your knight on c4, or in the other case on c5, would be really dangerous. Imagine this knight jumping to c4. That would mean that you always need to calculate sacrifices on a3, sacrifices on b2. That's a very annoying piece. So try to place a knight on c4 in a position like this, because in a Sicilian, first of all, it's very normal. Secondly, it's a lot more dangerous towards the white king than having a knight on c5. This c5 knight is attacking the pawn on e4, but not attacking the king on c1. So I think that that was a mistake already, even if it's not a blunder. But in this position, white will simply have a much more powerful attack, because the c5 knight is not doing much, and black will be just way behind his attack, building his attack on the queen side, than what's white doing on the king side. And yes, it's time to start attacking, so you know that we wanted to push g5, right? And after knight d7, Ponomarev played this prophylactic move that we have seen many times. King b1, you step out of the semi-open c file. On b1 the king is safer, so yes, it's a good idea to use one tempo for placing the king on a safer square. After knight b6, yes, the knight is heading to c4, but as I said, this is too slow. So let's think about how to progress on the king side. What do we want to achieve? We have pushed g5, we have a bishop on h4. So what can we do? How can we build up an attack against black's king on g8? What are the next steps in achieving something about opening files on the king side? Let's see who can carry that out. Good job, guys, but as far as I can see from Brain Boy, my question was too easy because I have written under the board the topic of today, and yes, you spotted that it's f5, f6, so we are playing for the breakthrough with f5, f6. Anyway, still kudos to everybody who have said f5 because you might not have seen the title or you might have thought it's something that comes later on. So yes, f5 is the correct move here. Congratulations everyone, even if it was an easy question. Sorry, that's the title of today's lecture. We are playing for f5 that we will play right now, and then we will try to push f6. So let's see what happens to this f5 pawn, because it's one thing to know the topic of the day and another thing is to understand it. So what do we want to achieve? First of all, it's logical that here we are playing for f5, f6 because we have a pawn on g5 already. That's cool. But alone it will not change the world. So we cannot push just g6 and say that that's an attack. That's not an attack. We need to prepare an attack. You cannot just sacrifice a pawn for nothing. We cannot push the h pawn. That's the reason why we are not going for h4, h5 and the usual g6 or h6 pushes. There's a bishop on h4 and you know that time is precious, so we don't have time for coming back with the bishop, then pushing h4, then h5. Those moves, 3 moves, and still nothing happening on the king side. At the same time, black will build up an attack on the queen side, so don't play slow. That's what you should avoid. Be as quick as possible, be as active as possible. Take the initiative. The initiative is so important when one is attacking. So f5, immediately launching this pawn storm, g5, f5. We are playing for f6. But what happens if black captures this pawn? We can either capture knight takes f5 or e takes f5, and I might ask you to think about it for a moment. Which one would you choose? But I will not put the time to think on because both moves are good. So depending on your style, whether you want to have a beautiful knight on f5 or you want to play e takes f5, open the diagonal of the g2 bishop and still threaten f6. So now that we have a pawn on f5, we still want to push f6. The other position is also nice because we have a beautiful knight on f5. Depends on your taste which one you prefer, but both are good. So after f5, it's not very recommendable for black to capture this pawn. Maybe what he had to do was to try to move the rook away, like, I don't know, rook e8 or rook c8, but I don't really believe in moves like rook c8 because yeah, that's what you would need to do in order to attack, but you can see that black is nowhere close to attacking our king on b1 and we are just about to break through on the king side. So I don't think that rook c8 is doing much harm to us here. Maybe trying to think about something like rook e8 and bishop f8 to bring back the bishop to f8 to at least protect the g7 square, but I don't like this position, to be honest. So I think it's already not very pleasant to play this position. What black did was pushing e5. He wants to do something in the center, and well, in some positions you might want to sacrifice a piece. Not here. Let's just move away the knight. So I will not ask you whether you would move it or not yet. Let's just move it away. It's one tempo, not a big deal. And yeah, it's not a problem if black captures here because luckily we have the king on b1 and not on c1. There's nothing wrong about opening the c file if there's no king on the c file. In worst case, we can always put the rook on c1. We have seen a game where that was the case, that we had the option of playing rook c1. So it's okay to play c takes b3. Nothing wrong with knight b3. But what about this position that happened in the game? Knight c a4. So yes, we want to push f6, but first let's just always question what is the threat after the opponent's move. Is knight c a4 threatening something? The answer is yes. So we cannot just go ahead with our plan, not care about the opponent's ideas. Knight c a4 is a dangerous move and you need to find the best way to react to it. I will let you think about this position, what to play against after knight c a4, what is the threat and what to do about it. Some very good thoughts there in the comments, guys. I'm very proud of you. You guys were great as a group, and I think you have mentioned basically all the options. We're gonna go through them one by one because this is a critical position. That means that you really need to be precise here. You need to find the best way to continue. If not, maybe the opponent will equalize or even be better. So first of all, let's see what happens if we do not care about knight a4. We can do that by playing a silly move, slow move like rook g1. Very bad. Of course, that was the threat. Many of you have spotted correctly that the threat was queen takes c3, a beautiful queen sacrifice, but not a very difficult one. After b takes, black just regains material, regains the queen, and will end up in a very advantageous position. It's just a whole piece up for nothing. So that's horrible. Let's not do this. What about other moves like f6 that we don't care about, queen takes c3, because we also attack a piece. So the e7 bishop is hanging. Yes, we allow queen takes c3. What's going on there? We have to calculate. So f6, queen takes c3. b takes is forced because queen b2 is mate. Knight takes, the king has to go somewhere. Knight e2, f takes e7. And this position, well, I wouldn't like to see that the queens come off of the board in general. If you want to give mate with the white, then just try to prevent exchanging queens. And secondly, this position is not just that it's an endgame already, it's gonna be an endgame soon, but it's even better for black. So we are not better here anymore with the white pieces, and the reason is that the e7 pawn will drop and these knights are going to be monsters. So there's one outpost for the black knight on c4. That knight cannot be chased away, that's why it's an outpost. There's another outpost on f4, so black will have two very, very powerful knights. Those knights will be stronger than the pair of bishops in this position. So this position is not something that you want to play with white, even if you manage to play rook d7. I don't think that you can hang on to this pawn on e7 for a long time, so I don't like this position at all for white. That's why f6 is not a good move, because it still allows queen takes c3, exchanging queens, and black will be better. So sometimes if the queen comes off of the board, especially here, black might just be better because we created so many holes in our position, and we also let him have the knight. So yeah, no matter that there's this e7 pawn, this position is bad, and pair of bishops, not in this position. Here I do prefer, and I think everybody prefers the knights in this position because they are stronger in this position. But what about knight d5, let's say, because that seems to be an active move preventing queen takes c3, right? Well, bad news, and it was also spotted by you guys that black can capture on d5 and then play queen c3. So you're like, oh my, I prevented queen takes c3, but I did not prevent the queen going to c3. It's a square that is protected by a pawn, but since there's knight c3 fork, it doesn't matter because queen c3 is a beautiful move threatening mate on b2. You have to capture it, and once again the same way of regaining material, and black is once again better. This is a better position. There's once again a pair of bishops against two knights, and we also have, well, another bishop and a knight, but I'm just comparing the pieces that are different. So yes, pair of bishops, but here the knights are stronger. There are many holes in white's camp, so you do not want to play this position. Also, there's a pawn that we have just captured, so that matters a lot. Do not play knight d5. So remember that yes, there's this threat of queen takes c3, but sometimes just because we move away the piece from that square by playing knight d5, if the opponent can eliminate this piece, it means that he can still go to that square. It doesn't matter that there's nothing on that square. That's painful. Another option that might be tempting is knight a2, because yes, you avoid queen takes c3 and you also prevent moves like b4. But there's one problem with this move. On the one hand, it's passive. But the biggest problem with this, because maybe if you can hold the position with this knight move, then maybe I wouldn't mind that much that it's passive if it protects everything. Sometimes you have to play ugly moves. But here it's not just an ugly move or passive move, it's also a bad move, because the other knight comes as well to c4, and now this is really getting bad, very bad. What can we do about that b2 pawn? It's just hanging and there's no piece to defend it. We would need to somehow manage to do a magic trick and make the bishop disappear from h4 and appear on c1. That's not legal. So after knight c4 we are in trouble. That's official. In this position black is winning. Oh, ouch. I know. I also thought that maybe knight a2, but no, you should be so careful. There's this a4 knight attacking the c3 knight and also the b2 pawn, so knight a2 is a bad move because the other knight comes to c4. So by eliminating these options, we don't have many more left. One would be to play rook d3, which could be a good idea because you defend the knight and you also prepare to bring the rook on the third rank to the king side. That's the rook lift that we have learned when we learned about the isolated pawn and the hanging pawn, so that was a very nice idea when playing for the attack against the king, bringing the rook on the third rank. Problem here might be is that d5 you have to consider, because as I said, if the opponent can counterattack in the center, that can be painful. I'm not sure it works, but you have to consider it. So you have to really think about moves like d5, then e takes, and the bishop takes, and who knows what's going on here. Like, it's a mess, even if this is not correct. I think this position is getting really dangerous, so maybe bishop takes a3 is not good. We cannot capture it because of knight takes c3, you see that, but I don't know, in this position, for instance, the computer says bishop e1 is the best move, so you just protect the c3 knight. You say you don't care about bishop takes b2. I don't know, I don't think this is a position for human beings. I wouldn't really like to play this position, even if it's winning for white. I don't see white's winning immediately, and my king is in danger too. So yeah, perhaps it's after queen h5, everything is fine, we are giving mate first, but if you can play in a safer way, I think it's a better idea. We are not engines, let's just play the human way. The human way is, after eliminating all the other options, knight takes a4, because yes, we allow b takes a4, which opens the b file, so now black has the b file and the c file, and we have to move the b3 knight away, but at least we eliminated this monster on a4, which killed our position after moves like knight a2. So do not allow the opponent having monsters. That's why, even if we don't want to help the opponent usually by letting him open files, here the b file, still we had to, because at least there's no attacking knight on the fourth rank. So yes, the b and the c files are semi-open files for black, but he doesn't have many active pieces. We have just eliminated his best attacking piece. That's also something important, that when you exchange pieces, compare the pieces. The a4 knight was a really dangerous piece. If you can get rid of it, it makes your attack more powerful. So now after b takes a4, you question where to go with that knight. We don't have many squares, but I want to see where would you head with that knight. Time to think. Good job, guys! Good job for picking the active response, knight a5. Before I continue, let me just go back to one position because I forgot to mention it, and you guys have correctly told me that after rook d3, Black can also play knight c4. So in this position we are forced to capture the knight on a4, and that's another explanation for capturing immediately, because if you see this position and you compare it with this position, it is clear that we don't want to help the opponent by forcing him play knight c4. If you have to capture on a4, just make it a move earlier. We don't want to see that knight on c4. Tempo all the time on the chessboard is so important here. We are not helping the opponent, so we capture immediately on a4 and then play knight a5, because that's the active way. The knight on a5 is a bit weird, but it is attacking the b7 bishop and it covers the c4 square, so black cannot play knight c4 in this position. He has to prepare it by playing rook c8, but that means one tempo, and we can use that tempo, that one move that we have right now, without having anything attacked, without any threat by black. We have this moment to use and go for it. So we go for it with, I will not put the time to think on, because this is the title of the lesson of today. F6, of course, F6, that's what we wanted. That's what we've been hoping for already for the last 7 moves. So F6, finally we got there. Why do we push it? We want to open files. What happens if the opponent captures it? Well, if he captures it, he will regret it, because after g takes, bishop f8, it's true that there's no mate immediately, there's no queen g4, queen g7, because, well, the bishop is protecting the g7 square, but the g7 square is not the only weakness in this position. There's the open g file. See this open beautiful file here, and also there's a weakness that is not that easy to spot quickly, but if you look at the position in depth, you realize that the h7's pawn, that pawn on h7 is a huge weakness. That's the weakest spot in black's camp right now, and we will attack it. The way to attack it is just to play bishop h3. We attack the rook on c8, so it has to go away. That's also good for us, because the queen was trying to attack the c2 pawn. We are protecting it, but we want to go away with our queen, so let's just make sure that the rook goes somewhere, like, I don't know, rook b8, and after bishop f5, this bishop and this queen will kill the king. There's just no way to defend. There's no knight to appear on f8, no knight can come to f6. All the black pieces are on the queen's side, only the black bishop is protecting something on the king's side, and that's a dark squared bishop, so who will protect the h7 pawn? No one. Bishop f5, queen h5, and it's mate on h7, black can resign. It was this easy, so f6 cannot be captured, black played bishop f8, but here f takes g7, of course, because that's why we played f6. We want to open files, so we play f takes g7. Bishop takes is the most natural continuation, and, well, this is not a position where we're gonna be giving a mate in 3 moves and there's gonna be a crushing attack. Yes, the king is weaker now because we have managed to make the g7 pawn disappear, but he has this g7 bishop, which is a pretty good defender. And we have opened the f file, but it's not like a huge thing because the queen is protecting the 7 pawn. The rook can go back if he has to. But anyway, the position is also better, not because of these factors about the black king. I was thinking how to put it in the best way, but also because of positional factors. So here, after playing bishop h3, once again the same thing. We want to make this c8 rook go away from the c file. We win a tempo by playing bishop h3. We will place this bishop somewhere better, somewhere like bishop f5. So we are making this bishop more powerful, more active by winning a tempo by playing bishop h3. And also what I was trying to say, and I will try to show it with an example. So after rook cb8, bishop e1 was played, and this might be a weird move, but you will soon see why it is important. For instance, if bishop c8, bishop takes, rook takes, bishop b4. I just want to show you this position. You don't have to understand all the moves, but look at this position now. This is what you need to understand. That here, the knight on a5, the bishop on b4, and this pawn on a3. These 3 pieces are holding all the queen side together. Black cannot do anything against our king. there's a semi-open c5, semi-open b5, but thanks to these pieces, the knight, the bishop, and the pawn on a3, we can not suffer any attack against our king. On the other hand, these pieces are not just protecting our king, they are active pieces. This bishop is attacking the weakest pawn in black's camp, which is the d6 pawn. So here our position is better in positional terms because there's this backward pawn on d6 which we are attacking. We can double our rooks on the d5, we can even bring the queen to d2. It's very difficult to keep this d6 pawn. On the long run we will be attacking this pawn, and we connect this attack against the d6 pawn with ideas against the black king, so we can bring the rook to d3 in order to double rooks against the d6 pawn. That rook can appear on h3, we can bring the queen to h5. There are many ideas, so here we will be attacking, we will be combining our attack against the black king. Again, we will combine this attack with the attack against the d6 pawn and these positional ideas, doubling rooks on the d5. We can play then rook c3 too at some point. The nice knight on a5 is controlling so many squares. I mean, it's a weird knight, but useful knight, so it doesn't allow black go to those squares, and this bishop, the b4 bishop, is just brilliant. That's why bishop e1 is a really nice move in this position, because on h4 it seems like, yeah, okay, we have developed the bishop, but it's not doing anything. It is blocked by our own pawn. So bishop e1 is a beautiful maneuver, and this is a strategical idea that you should learn from this game, that you see that in this position, our bishop is not useful on h4. Secondly, you note that there's this weakness, the backward d6 pawn. So you connect these two ideas, how to improve my bishop, how to attack the weak pawn. Bishop b1, and you go to b4. Beautiful, isn't it? Also, this bishop is supporting the a4 knight, because in this position, the a5 knight is lonely, it's not supported, it might be hanging, but after bishop e1 and bishop b4, there's nothing wrong. Against our king, against the knight, nothing. But I have to be quick because we will start the thematic tournament very quickly, so let's see how the game finished. d5 was played, and it's a good try. Black is trying to counterattack in the center, but here, after e takes, of course, is a bad move. Knight takes, and now the knight is active. It has to f4. The b7 bishop is suddenly having a diagonal, the b8 rook there, the queen, like all those pieces I colored in green are good. And in this position, we suddenly start to suffer. So d5, e takes d5, bad move. Don't open the position and improve the opponent's pieces by capturing on d5. That will only help black. But after d5, Ponomaryov simply played bishop b4. You cannot capture on e4 ever because of bishop d6, winning the rook on b8. That's a nice motive. So black played d4, but if he closes the center, that's also good for us. As I said, the knight, the bishop, and the pawn on a3, those three pieces are holding the queen side. So now we can focus on the king side and play bishop f5. Our idea is simple, queen h5 and mate on h7 soon. Black has to exchange this bishop. That's what would have happened before if we had played bishop a5 2 moves earlier. And now, well, okay, it will be exchanged, but we still have the f file. That's a semi-open file. And of course we capture with the rook because we need this open file. If you capture with the pawn, once again you give up the square for the knight, and suddenly black is just doing great here after knight d5. Make sure that you control the central squares. Rook takes f5 is a lot better, and here after rook d8, rook d3, you know this motive, bringing the rook on the third rank. Queen h5, rook h3, also you can play rook f3. So many ideas here, but mainly against the h7 pawn because that's a huge weakness. So knight c4 was one of the last moves that black played here because, yes, our knight is hanging on a5, but we don't care. As so many times it happens when you're about to give mate, when you are building up a mating attack, a crushing attack, you don't care about pieces. So here, rook h3, and the piece cannot be captured because after queen h5, h6, well, h6 you have to play. If not, there's no way to run away. I don't even know what move to play because this bishop, so useful, doesn't allow the black king escape. So we are threatening mate on h7. After h6, simply g takes, and here, if bishop h8, this would be a pretty mate. And if he plays something else, like, I don't know, what other move? Maybe rook a c8, yeah, threatening queen c2. You can even play, well, rook f2, for instance, if you just want to protect it and you're threatening to capture and then mate. The engine plays a very weird looking move that he says that bishop c3, white is winning. So yeah, we are a piece down and we gave up a second piece because after d takes c3, h takes g7 and the c3 pawn is disturbing black while the g7 pawn is helping white. Just try to understand all these tactics. Well, if you do not want to calculate all these things, then you can just simply play after rook ac8, rook f2, and you are still winning. It's a piece down, but we are giving mate, h takes g7 or h7, they are coming, or queen j5. Everything, this position is about to collapse. What happened in the game was rook h3, knight e3, and here queen h5. No way to prevent mate, h6 and rook f2. He protected the c2 pawn, and really there's nothing to do here. So bishop f8, and here black resigned because you cannot escape with the king. Everything goes with a check. So let's just see the final position. It could have been this final blow, tactical blow, rook takes, and after queen f6, queen e6. You do not allow king d7. You cannot let the opponent escape with his king. This would have been a beautiful mate. Sorry for rushing at the end, but the thematic tournament is about to start, so I had to finish this game quickly. But you know that you can find these games in our database. We have millions of games on Chess24, so do use the database tab. I will now show you where the thematic tournament is. You should sign up. You still have 2 more minutes to sign up. And I will also suggest where can you find these games. So let's just bring up the website and I will show you now. If you are on Chess24, well, let's just go from the beginning. Now you should be seeing what I see. Chess24. That's where you are. I mean, you must be watching the show, so you are here. That's where I see your comments. And if you go to Chess24, the main page, you already see here that our tournament is beginning in 2 minutes. So, missed strategy, opposite side castling, beginning in 2 minutes. You only have 2 more minutes left to sign up for the tournament. I'll be commentating on your games, giving you advice on how can you improve your chess. And let's just practice what we have learned in these shows, in the previous 2 sessions, because it's gonna be about one of the positions that we have seen either today or last week. I already see that we have 21 players. That's great, guys, but you can still sign up. So let's make that number 25. And if we make it 25, then I will say let's make it 30. The more the better. I want you to practice because I think this is a great chance that you guys as a community can work together. So let's practice together, and I'll be watching your games because you guys are great students. You have said so many good thoughts today, so many good ideas. I want to see those ideas appearing on the board, so I want to see you practicing what you have learned from me, hopefully. So let's see what you have learned. You have still 55 seconds to sign up. I'll copy it to the chat in case you haven't seen where it is. Click here and you can still sign up. And then I will show you the database tab when I see a game going on, because that's very useful. I already talked about it before, but as I said, we have millions of games available on Chess24, so you can look up any game that I have showed you. If you want to check this game in more depth, because I was rushing through the last moves, I know I had to, I'm sorry, but you can find that game on our database here on Chess24. You can simply go to Learn, Analysis and Coaching, and there click on the Database tab under the board. So you can look for the game by typing the names of the players. You can search for openings, you can search for particular tournaments, you can search by year, by opponent, by anything. Just use the Database tab because it's really such an amazing tool here on Chess24. First round pairings are already out, so we have 25 players. Thank you guys for listening to my request. You always do everything I wish for. I wished for 25 players in my tournament today. And yes, we are 25, so I will have a lot of games to follow. I hope that I can mention everybody's game. If not, just shout at me please in the chat on Chess24, because sometimes I miss games. Sometimes there are so many games going on at the same time that I might forget to see 1 or 2. I don't do it on purpose, so just shout at me, say that, Anna, talk about me as well. Please tell me something about my play, and I will do it. So this is a starting position that is not from today. I was tricky, I know. I always do this because I want to see who have learned about everything that we have seen, not only today, but this was last week's topic about the g5, h5, h6 push. So I want to see how this game develops between PJK and Serhat. Serhat is the winner of the previous thematic tournament we had 2 weeks ago, so he won it with a full score. He scored 5 out of 5 if I remember well. That was a very good job, Serhat. Let's see if you can win this tournament today as well and how the game develops. The funny thing about the starting position is that I will ask PJK why he thought that it was necessary to move away the knight from d4, because that's a nice central piece and it's not attacked. I mean, yes, black can exchange it, but that's not the end of the world. So you don't have to move this knight away from d4. It's nice on d4. What you can do here with white is to go forward already by playing h5. And that was what we have seen in the game of Nihua against Dao Thiem last week. So you can look that game up later on if you forgot the plans. But yes, be as quick as possible, push h5 and then h6, because here, since the knight is on f8, oh, what am I doing? Since the knight is on f8, protecting the g6 square, it's not easy to break through with g6, but yes, we want to break through with h6 in this position. Remember to alter your plan depending on how the opponent's pieces are placed. So h6 is a great idea here. h5, h6 as quickly as possible. I will see if any other player has played it. Christian has finished already. Maybe his opponent was not here. I'm sorry, it seems like Berhoz had to leave. What about Koenj against Brain Boy? Koenj has played. Why do you guys move the knights? Because maybe you thought b4 was a threat, but anyway, even if black plays b4, then you move the knight. I don't see the reason why would you want to move the d4 knight or the c3 knight in this position. Just keep them there where they are. They are fine where they are. So h5, h6, that's a great plan in this position. Knight c2 was played and then bishop b7. h5, it appeared on the board. Good job, Koenj. And after, okay, so you wanted to recapture on d4 with the knight. That's why you played knight e2, I believe, and then you played h5, knight e5. And this knight is heading to c4, so Brain Boy is playing very well too, because yes, that's an annoying knight on c4. And here I think he managed to get you into trouble, Koenj, because he took the bishop and then, yeah, suddenly white had to be on the defensive side, because if black manages to attack the knight with e5, then the c2 pawn will fall, so you had to play rook d2, and after queen b6, queen d3. Yeah, everything came so quickly, rook c4, g6, and yes, we managed to weaken the g7 square, but black's pieces are so active here that you cannot place the queen on d4 or on c3 and give mate on g7. So yeah, I think Brain Boy played very well here, and oh, this pin was winning a piece. So after e5, you shouldn't capture on e5, f takes e4, loses a piece. But anyway, I think that Brain Boy has done a very good job activating his pieces. So don't play moves like knight c2, because it's not like it's a bad move, but it's too slow. Remember that you have to be as quick as possible. So go for h5, h6 immediately. Let's see if Incansable against Perfect Champion has played that. Wow, there's an attack going on. So he certainly played h5. Good job, Incansable, with the white pieces. g6 was played by Perfect Champion, trying to stop the attack, but anyway, a3. Guys, you are afraid of b4, but b4 is not a big deal. So after b4, you can move the knight away and nothing happens. Actually, in Nihua's game, he didn't even move the knight away after b4. He just let it be captured because he wanted so badly to have the queen on c3. It was a very nice piece sacrifice, because just look at that game, because I know it's difficult to imagine blindfold. But yes, sometimes you don't even have to worry about b takes c3. You can even give up a piece if you are giving mate on g7 thanks to the queen on c3 and the pawn on h6. So a3 I don't think is necessary, because it allows b4. That's what I was talking about at the beginning of this show, at the beginning of the Ponomaryov game, that a3 is useful when it doesn't allow immediate breakthroughs, but here it might be a bit annoying that after a takes, knight takes, there's this knight on b4, the queen can come to a5. Nothing going on yet, but still, it's a bit unpleasant. Maybe not a huge deal, but still, queen takes, a takes b4, yeah, you won a pawn, so yeah, perhaps it was still okay. But I just believe that a3 is not necessary in this position because it loses a time that we could have used for either opening the h file, h takes, but then maybe you were afraid of f takes, because if h takes, then queen h2, and there's mate on h8, so h takes, f takes. Yeah, maybe you thought that the attack is not that strong, but after g6 you can also play h6, and if b4, just like in Nihua's game, if you manage to place the queen on this diagonal, like imagine h6, b4, it's not even a threat b takes c3, because once you have the queen on c3, you're threatening to capture on c6 and there will be mate on g7. That's how Nihua's game went, but also you can think about other ways of playing, like knight takes c6, and then queen takes, then queen d4, and you will be threatening mate and threatening the pawn. Like there are many ways, but I think it's just really nice to have the pawn on h6 in these kind of positions, because the g7 square will be a weakness. But I see that Incansable has finished the game, so he kept his pawn, it seems, and he managed to. But what was going on? I just played these moves too quickly. Yeah, rook b8 takes b3, and then he went, yeah, e5 is usually a move that you don't want to play in the Sicilian unless you have something active, an active counterplay for the weakened d5 square. Here the knight on d5 becomes a beast, so it also protects the b4 pawn, it attacks the e7 bishop. This position is really bad for black already. Incansable, you played really well, I think. I'm not sure that a3 was necessary, but if you feel safer by playing a3, then you can do it. Of course, who am I to say that you shouldn't play a3? You can play as you wish. If you feel safer by playing a3, then do it. Let's see, player no 5 against the Chese. I think that's the username. I hope that I pronounced it correctly. Oh, player no is not here. What about this game between Abyssia against Unrated? Abyssia, oh, not here. Why are so many players who signed up but were not here? Why are you not present? Is a football match going on? I didn't know about that. Tennis, golf, cricket, basketball, volleyball. I don't know what else you guys watch. So many of you have left. I'm a bit sad about this because I really hoped for 25 players. Maybe next time. Let's see, Colin Crone against Krunks. This was h5, correct move, well done. And after b4, Nihua in this position played h6. I know that's difficult to guess, so I don't blame anybody who doesn't remember that move. So you can sacrifice the bishop. You can sacrifice the knight on c3. I will show it now. So h6. And this cannot be captured because after queen takes c3, we are threatening knight takes c6. The knight is pinned, very important, so there's no knight e5 here. This is hanging. And thanks to this pin, the hanging knight on c6 and the g7 weakness, if black plays something like bishop b7, then knight b5 wins the game because the queen is hanging and we are threatening mate on g7. That was Nihua's game, and that's why after b4, you don't even have to move the knight because h6 is just such a powerful move. Check that game if you missed it. It was last week's session. I don't say that knight a4 is a mistake, so this is still a game. The game is going on. After knight takes, queen a5, you should go b3, rook b8, and now h6. Why not h6? With the queen on d4, I would really love to play h6. Maybe you were scared of queen a5 there. Anyway, you should go for it. You should go for the attack. If not, the opponent will do something like bishop d7, attack your knight on a4, and you might have to play something like knight b2 in order to avoid bishop takes a4 after queen a7. Yes, the e7 bishop will be hanging too, but I prefer black here. And yes, that was a trapped piece. The queen is trapped on e7, so this was definitely not a good idea. Queen a7, you should come back with the knight to prevent bishop takes a4. A pity, Colin, because you started well. Just go more active. Bishop e2. I know that it's tempting to develop this bishop, but it's not more useful on e2, nor on d3. So nor on g2, I can hardly find any good squares for it. And if you go to c4, maybe you step into d5. I know it's difficult to believe, but sometimes it's better not to touch that piece if you don't find a good square for it. So just h6 and go for it, try to attack. Or if you're afraid of queen a5, then prevent it with f4 and then h6. But you should attack, and bishop e2 doesn't really help your attack because it connects the rooks, it's true, but it's just too slow, I believe. Let's see some other games because round 2 is already going on and you guys are so many that I have to be switching games constantly in order to talk about everybody's game. At least once, I should try. Let's see if I can manage. Arrivato Zampano playing against v2, knight e6. I think v2 has left 2. Oh, it's so difficult to spot who is... Okay, yeah, here I can see 1001. So those are the players who are not here, it seems. Oh, Serhat's game, I have already checked. What about... No, but player no. Is he here already? Bet Rose against player no. I think they are not. I think player no is not here, unfortunately. So, let's see. Somebody who I haven't mentioned yet. Let's see. Jakob Schneider against Let Me Win. Both from Germany. Knight takes c6. Interesting. Although, as I said, I wouldn't touch the knight. I think h5 is the best move here because you just go for the attack. You don't care about knight takes d4. You even say thank you to your opponent if he captures on d4 because you wanted to place the queen there on d4. So yeah, I think it's okay to play just h5 and go for it. Knight takes and then knight e2. I think Jakob, you are playing in a very positional way because you want to place now this c3 knight on d4, so you are making a knight maneuver in order to improve your knight. But this isn't the kind of position where you have time for this. I also like to play a lot for weak squares, knight maneuvers, outposts. I'm Miss-strategy after all. But this isn't the position where you should be Miss-strategy. This is the position where you should play like Sopiko, so go for the attack, play h5, play h6. Go for it. You don't need to move this c3 knight unless it's attacked, so keep it there. Don't go for knight maneuvers here, I think it's too slow. Okay, you're heading to f4. That's better because at least it's connected to some attacking ideas. You might want to place the knight on h5 and then play queen d4. That's interesting. But here I think Let Me Win responded in the correct way because you should counterattack in the center if you can, and d5 would open the center. It would open the diagonal of the bishop if e takes d5, and you threaten to open d5 for the rook, for the d8 rook. What happened in the game? Oh, sorry, d5 and knight f4, so I'm talking about this position. After d5, you threaten to open the d file or the diagonal of the bishop by capturing on d5 with the pawn. Knight f4, I don't understand here because d takes e4 wins a pawn. The queen is hanging and we have just captured the pawn, and I don't think you wanted to play queen takes d8 to give up the queen for a rook and the bishop. So yeah, after d5, you should try to react in a better way. Maybe knight d4 in order to block the d file, attack the queen, you win a tempo, and then you either capture on d5 or you push e5, but try to keep the center under control. I wouldn't give up any pawns because now black is just fine here. He's a pawn up. It's queen... I don't believe queen f2. It must have been a mouse slip. I mean, no, Jakob, I don't believe that you played queen f2. Please say that you didn't. It must have been a mouse slip. I mean, queen e2, queen c1, queen e1, any move that protects the d1 rook should have been played. Pay attention to your hanging pieces because this giving up the d1 rook is not something that you want to do. Ouch! On the other hand, Let Me Win played really well by pushing d5, so congratulations to Let Me Win, and I will now check another game. But I see so many names that I have mentioned but in other games, so Serhat has lost. I don't believe that. How did that happen? Serhat, you won the previous tournament. What happened to you? You got mated. Oh my, we should check this game. I'm sorry, Serhat. h5, b4, and here Nihua played h6. Doesn't matter if you don't remember, because moving away the knight is also fine. Knight e2, f6, and here I think, okay, bishop h3 should be okay too. Why not bishop h3? But I was also thinking that you can go for moves like h6, so try to create as many breakthroughs as possible, try to open as many files as possible. f6 might help us. If he captures on g5, we will capture it with the bishop. So h6 I think is a very logical move in this position. Bishop h3, e5, knight f5, but white is perfectly fine here. That's a monster on f5. F takes, knight takes. What happened? I mean, you won a... No, you okay. You did not win the exchange because there was also knight takes, not only queen takes. I'm seeing ghosts, but how did you lose this position? I mean, this is getting messy after this exchanges on knight e6. I admit, but you shouldn't be losing this game. What happened later? I'm not sure that you need to keep this bishop that much. I think you can just go for moves like rook g1, double rooks, and attack the g7 pawn as quickly as possible. This e6 knight is protecting the g7 square. That's an important square. That's where you want to attack the king. So I wouldn't be worried about knight takes g5. I would give up that bishop in order to bring my pieces, the rooks especially, to the g file as quickly as possible. Once knight takes g5 happens, you have queen takes g5, h6. I think that position is just really difficult to hold for black, so I don't like bishop h4 that much because it loses some time, and the knight on e6 is a very useful defender. This piece is protecting so many squares. I will click here so that then it lights up that's a very useful defender. That's why I would not have minded exchanging it. You wanted to go for the pawns, but now black got somewhat active. Anyway, still this position, I mean, pawns up and active pieces, you must have blundered something later because this was okay. I mean, you gave up the f3 pawn, but still h6. I mean, what went wrong? Okay, here you sacrificed an exchange, but even the sacrifice doesn't look bad. Maybe it's not the best move here, but still, I want to see what happened. It's interesting for sure. Check queen e6. No, you shouldn't give a check and let the opponent play queen e6 with a tempo. If you want to do this thing about the check, then you have to play first rook takes h6. Yeah, maybe rook takes h6 was not the best because it's interesting. The sacrifice is interesting, that's for sure. Can you do it by playing rook h1 takes h6 and then queen b3 check? At least you control the e6 square. Maybe that was the way if you want to sacrifice this rook, and then you have this check, so there's no queen e6, no rook e6, and now it can be really dangerous, I believe, if king h8, then bishop h4, threatening bishop f6. So these kind of ideas, if you want to sacrifice, I believe you had to keep the b6 rooks, but okay, this is just my first impression. Of course, you need to analyze this game in more depth, but yeah, you must have blundered something in this position. Okay, this was just an exchange down already, and Rocker managed to win it. So congratulations, Rocker, you beat the champion of the previous edition. And yeah, that was a very interesting game. It was a very good fight, so congrats to both of you guys. Serhat, maybe you got too enthusiastic about sacrificing there the exchange. I think your position was really good, but I'm sure that you know where you could improve it. Let's see Camille's against Iber. This, still going on. h5, bishop b7, h6, good job. Camels, you are playing the correct moves. h5, h6 is the plan that we wanted to carry out. g6 and now knight takes to play queen d4. So yeah, f4 I like, because if you play queen d4 first, then there's e5 and there's no mate on g7. So actually what Camels is doing is to prepare queen d4 by playing f4. And you can also play for maybe for f5 later on in the future, but you certainly want to play queen d4. So this was the point, queen d4 threatening mate on g7, and after e5 you can capture this pawn. Sometimes you don't want to win this pawn because it might give a lot of activity to black, depends. So yeah, we have gained the pawn, we are a pawn up, but we have opened the b file for black. So it's a double-edged thing to do. It's up to you, and it's up to the position, of course, whether you want to capture it or not. After rook b8, queen a3, I would be really worried about d5 because now it's almost like my queen is trapped on a3. You still have bishop c5 or queen takes a6, but grabbing more and more pawns and opening the queen side is not a good idea. Bishop c5 I like, on the other hand, because I would love to exchange pieces now that I'm a pawn up. Rook b2. Ooh, what happened here? Rook takes b2. Iber found some tactical blow here. Rook takes and rook check. Bishop takes. What's the point? I don't see the point. Okay, I think this rook sacrifice wasn't working. I'm sorry to say that, but knight d4. Okay, you're threatening knight takes c2, checkmate. Winning the queen also, but checkmate. But after bishop d3, what's the point? D takes e4, knight takes. This is a rook down, so I think either you really love sacrifices, but sometimes they don't work. Sometimes they aren't good. Rook takes b2 here was not working. You should definitely go for some other move, not rook takes b2. Actually, any other move that would have maybe d takes. I know maybe you don't want to grab pawns, but I'm not sure what is the best move here. But if rook takes b2 doesn't work, then you shouldn't sacrifice a rook because that's a whole rook. So careful with those sacrifices, guys. Let's see. Round 3, Christian against Perfect Champion. And I will use my phone to check the chat because if you know that now I cannot see another window, I will use my phone for that. And just shout at me if I haven't mentioned your game yet, if I haven't said anything about any of your games, because I do not want to miss anybody. I don't do that on purpose, just that there are so many games to follow. So Christian played h5, and Perfect Champion knight e5, h6. You guys are playing very well, both of you. G6, trying to keep the position closed on the king side, and the knight is heading to c4, so very, very well played by both players. Knight b3. Oh, giving up this pawn. Why? Not that it's so bad. You know that you can sacrifice pawns and it opens the f file for white. But I'm not sure that it was necessary to give it up, because if you keep the pawn, then you can play f4 at some point, like now. And yeah, I'm not a fan of giving up pawns when then I see that there's this outpost for the black knight on e5. Now this knight on e5 is there forever. We can only exchange it for another piece, but we don't have the option of chasing it away with a pawn. There's no f pawn anymore, so I don't like so much giving up this pawn. Oh, okay, I'm blundering. No, forgive me. I completely forgot about bishop b6. Oh, but then Christian is very tricky. So while I was trying to open the chat on my phone and at the same time trying to explain something, I completely blundered myself too. Christian's idea. He gave up the pawn on purpose because after queen f2 this is a double attack. The knight is hanging on f3 and he's threatening bishop b6. Christian, you are very tricky. Still, maybe even after winning the exchange, this knight on e5 might compensate. I'm not sure, but this is a piece and a pawn for the exchange. So since this knight on e5 is a beast, cannot be chased away, that's an outpost. Yes, we are in exchange up, but it's so difficult to find a spot in black's position which you can attack. So even if you know that you're gonna win an exchange, I'm not sure that I would have gone for this line. I think I still prefer pushing f4 and chasing the knight away than having an exchange up where black's pieces are pretty active. But let me open the chat because I talk a lot and I don't see the chat. I want to see what you guys are saying. My Strategies Middlegame show. I'm going to see my own show now from the phone. And let's see. Oh, Cohen says he blundered and PJK winning. Thanks. I think nobody has complained yet that I haven't mentioned their names, so all I see are thanks and thanks for the fine lesson. Thanks, Anna. Thank you guys. Thank you for the positive feedback. Always appreciated. So this position is a mess. I believe that, yes, it's an exchange up for white, but a piece and a pawn can compensate if the pieces are active. And oh, yeah, another pawn was taken. So this is a mess. I don't know what will happen in this game, but I do know that I have to go for other games too. I think I haven't mentioned Freddy yet, so let's talk about Freddy's game. Have I mentioned Freddy? I have a very short memory. Excuse me for that. Oh, Freddy did not play because ABC is not here. Okay, yeah, I should have known that. What about PJK against Arrivato? PJK with the white pieces and oh, Serhat is asking what will be the topic next week. No, it won't be opposite side castling. And actually, I wanted to say it at the end, but I will say now as you ask. Next week, I'm going to be in Hamburg with Sopico. So whenever we are united, Miss Strategy and Miss Tactics together, we produce video series. We are finishing our video series on Magnus Carlsen. So this is a Magnus trilogy on the career of Magnus Carlsen. And you might expect a live show together, Sopico and me, from the Hamburg studio of Chess24. So next week is gonna be a special week. It won't be the usual Middlegame show. Stay tuned for the announcements. And also, tomorrow there's a huge tournament here on Chess24 at 8 in the evening Central European time. Sopico and Jan will participate and comment on it live. I will talk about this once again at the end of this show, but just make sure that you play the tournament. It's gonna be awesome. So many participants, 250 participants. I believe it's gonna be a huge open, and Sopico and Jan will both play and comment on their games at the same time. So it's gonna be incredible either to watch the shows or play the tournament or both. Make sure that you do that. Tomorrow, 8 Central European time, and I'll see what happened in this game between PJK and Arrivato. Knight c2. I don't know still the reason why you guys like moving the knight away from c3. Let's see what happened. b3. Yeah, preventing knight c4, but now it is black who has the initiative suddenly and not white. So we have played two slow moves, knight e2 and b3, and now what about our attack against black's king? Everything that is happening on the queen side and not on the king side. I'm not sure I like how this game developed like this. So if black can manage to push a5, a4 very quickly here, then he's gonna be fine. Yes, the b5 pawn is hanging, I know that. So that's why he played bishop d7, f4, knight g4, bishop g1. Now this knight on g4 might get trapped, so it's a tricky position. Maybe it was a better idea to go to c6 then, because I'm not sure that you will manage to survive with the knight on g4. e5 is a good move. That's the way to save it. Of course, if you don't do that, it might get tricky how you come out of g4 once this knight is attacked, but e5 is a good move. So yeah, knight g4 and e5 is the most dynamic way to play this position. It happens many times in the Sicilian that you push e5 and after f takes e5. Okay, here I think d takes e5, the d file opens up. This is a really nice position, and also the bishop already protects the knight. Nothing going on against the knight. But also in other positions, not in this position, you will want to have the knight on e5, and that's once again an outpost for the knight. There's no f pawn nor d pawn that could chase away the knight from e5. So depending on the position here, f takes, d takes, I think black is more than fine there. Knight f5 is a good move, and after bishop takes, e takes, f6. Yeah, this knight is still a bit weird on g4, and you don't want to play e takes f4, because then knight takes f4 and the knight will land on d5. That would be really painful. That's an outpost too, and that's a very, very powerful outpost. So I understand you didn't want to play e takes, but still the knight is a bit weird on g4. Anyway, let's see what happened in the game, because I cannot comment on every move. f6 and now bishop h3. Okay, too late. That's what I was worried about when you play knight g4, that you might not get out of g4 with the knight. So e5 is a good move. That's the way to play, very dynamic here. But knight f5, maybe, okay, maybe take, and but if you have to capture on f4, knight takes. I still don't like it because we gave up the d5 square and this knight appears on d5. So yeah, now we save the knight, we can go back to e5 whenever it's attacked, but the other knight will appear on d5. So I still prefer this position with white. That's why this knight on g4, yeah, it was an interesting option, but maybe you took too much risk by playing knight g4, and then not wanting to capture on f4 ever means that your knight has no way back and you will lose the knight. So that's a pity because it was uninteresting. Oh my. It was a really interesting game. Let's see Incansable against Camille's. What happened in this game? What a short game. Let's see how it happened. h5, knight takes, queen takes, e5, queen d2, and now bishop h3. Good idea. This we have seen also, that when you want to place a knight on d5, many times you can try to exchange the bishop, the light square bishop, by playing bishop h3. Of course, if the opponent doesn't want to help you, then he will just play not bishop takes h3. I mean, that's the bad move in this position. He will play something else, like b4 is a good move, chasing the knight away. And in general, if you keep the bishop... Okay, just let me show it with another move. Not that knight d5 is good, but I mean, in any other position, black will allow white capture on e6, and you can take back with the pawn. So in this way, you protect the d5 square, and that won't be a weakness anymore. So it's a good idea, even if white plays with bishop h3, to keep the bishop on e6 and take back with the f-pawn if necessary to protect the d5 square, and there won't be any hole anymore on d5. Knight d5 is good, I like it, it's an active move. And queen takes, and now g6, brilliant play by white. So Incansable played very well, he took the initiative, and now I believe it's gonna be made in a few moves. Oh my, what a pawn storm breakthrough, g6, h6. Yeah, you actually managed to play all the moves we have seen in these sessions. So g6, h6, pawn storm, the queen appeared, bishop h3 too, we mentioned. Very good Incansable. And for Camille's, I would say, okay, let's see how the game finished, because it must have been beautiful how the game ended. Okay, this was just a queen, bishop f8, but what can you do if not bishop f8? I mean, yeah, bishop f8, it's pinned, but if you go rook g8, I don't think you can survive for much longer neither, because, I mean, I don't see an immediate mate in that position, but still, this position is just, it's horrible. I mean, you can play any move with white, I believe, just any. Take this guy first, maybe, and then if black has to go knight h7, like, you go, even simple moves like bishop f5 are very effective, because you open the h5 for the rook, you have the f5 bishop attacking, you have always queen g6 too. This position is horrible. So Incansable played very well, and for black I would say that first of all, I'm not sure that the king here was so good, but anyway, this position, no, this is still fine. b4, knight d4, takes, this shouldn't be that bad, I believe. Maybe you should be faster. Not knight d7. The knight is okay on f8. It prevents g6. So what can you do? Problem is that we cannot go rook c8 because of the bishop on h3. It's a useful piece. So yeah, not so easy actually. I thought it was easier to make a move here with black, but no, because this bishop controls the diagonal, the queen is fine on d5, and these pawns are going forward. So maybe this position is already difficult, which means that after bishop h3 you should play something else, not b4. Maybe you should go rook c8 first, but then knight d5 still. I'm not sure what you had to play here actually. Is this position already that dangerous? If rook c8, knight d5, you take it, then the rook is hanging on c8. Oh, not easy. Actually, this position is not easy already. Maybe you should still try something like d5. Sometimes it's a pawn sacrifice to give up the pawn with d5, but try to open files. Still, I don't see why it could work. I don't like the position already. I don't like it. So very well played by Incansable. I should analyze this position And then it means that knight takes d4 is bad too, so then you should go for b4 immediately and not knight takes an e5. But these are such tiny details that, you see, first I thought they are not mistakes, but then you end up in a position which is already unpleasant. This position after knight d5 is really unpleasant, so it was very well played by Incansable. Let's see round 4. Let's see Cranks. Oh, that's Incansable. I want to say once again the game of Incansable because I wanted to see Cranks' game, but word 20. I think I haven't talked about your game today yet. Word 20 against Abysia. Let's see this game. So let me see the game, how it went. H5, knight e5, h6, very good, good job, g6 and f4. I like that you kick out the knight, you kick it away from e5, b4 counterattacking, but knight takes e6 was played here. Okay, mess. I thought you would move the c3 knight and then you have to do something about the e5 knight, but yeah, if knight e2 then there's knight c4 and maybe you didn't want to go knight a4. But what about this knight takes e6? I don't understand it. Am I missing something? I mean, this is just a piece down because both knights are still hanging and we have just sacrificed the piece. I don't get the idea. Word 20. I don't understand why you played knight takes e6. Yes, now you have knight d5, but this is a piece down. Come on, this is a piece down. Why did you play knight takes e6? I don't understand it. So after f4, you either capture the knight on e5, but then d takes e5 is a good move. So you had to go here, perhaps knight a4, and after queen a5, the knight is still hanging on e5, but whenever we take it, then d takes e5 comes, and the knight is pinned on d4. Then actually f4 is not as good as I believed, and maybe you had to prepare it by playing a3, the move I was not suggesting, but maybe you have to go for that move with knight c4 anyway. This is not as easy as it seems, I know. So f4, b4, but still knight takes e6 is desperate. You don't have to go for that. Going for knight a4, and then there are many things. I don't know who is better after moves like, I don't know, if queen a5, you still don't want to capture it because then it means that black will regain material due to the pin, and also the a4 knight is hanging. But still, is this so bad if you play b3? You protect this guy, you might want to capture now because, well, actually, was it working? No, because what I want to do, I thought I wanted to do the move later, but I want to go for this position, but not here, because once this queen is captured, my rook is also hanging. So nice trick, Anna, but you tricked yourself. But these are the kinds of moves that you should calculate when you have this position. If you don't want to sacrifice, then just protect the piece. Don't capture on e5 until you don't see that it's good for you. These kind of things. I know this is such a double-edged position, a very sharp position, so I know it's easy to make mistakes, but knight takes c6 is just a piece sacrifice that doesn't work. I'm sorry. But well played by Abysia. You played very active with the black pieces, so very good job. What about Luis Roberto against Iber? Woo! What happened to the kingside pawns? Whoa. Okay, this is a piece up for black, but the black king is naked, as I like to say it. And I believe it's gonna be made shortly. How did this happen? h5. Rook. Oh, bishop b7, I can't read, and I cannot click away. Oh, clicking here and there as usual, I'm so clumsy. So, h5, bishop b7, g6. Interesting that Luis Roberto goes for the g6 breakthrough even with the knight on f8. We have said in general that when the knight is on f8, you probably want to go for the h6 breakthrough because the g6 square is very well protected. But if you like to sacrifice in this way, oh, h takes and h6, very creative. I like it actually. I don't know if it's that strong, but I definitely like that. It's taking the initiative, going for it, opening the H file. Very creative, Luis Roberto. We haven't talked about anything like this, so you made it up by yourself, and it seems to be pretty effective because you created a big attack. It's bishop f6 was a good defending move by Iber, because now you have an f8 knight protecting your king, and the g7 bishop. This fianchetto bishop is very useful. So if you can keep these pieces around your king, then you will not get mated ever. All the squares are covered by these pieces. But what White will try to do is to play bishop h6 at some point, not here with the knight hanging on d4, but you want to exchange this bishop. Knight ce2, but bishop h6 here. He prepared it with knight c2. And can't you keep this bishop by playing, I don't know, if bishop f6, then bishop takes f8. Maybe you can try king takes. I know it might look weird, but I just want to hang on to this bishop. f5 is still logical because you want to bring the queen to the king's side, but I think just suddenly too many things will open up. Maybe it was okay. Maybe it's still fine. I would be just a bit worried. Oh wow, bishop takes. So this is how the pawns disappeared. Luis Roberto sacrificed the piece on f5, and then he gave checks, and I think this cannot be survived. Oh, with the king on d5. I wonder if you can survive it. I don't really think that this position... Oh, d5, not wanting to repeat. No, but... Okay. Everything was really impressive, very creative, but you just sacrificed too many things, Luis Roberto, because, I mean, this position looks very promising. I'm sure that you have something here. Maybe knight f4 here to avoid king d5, but then king d7. I don't know exactly the way, you have to calculate it, and of course in Blitz it's not so easy to find the best way always, but this position, oh my god. I mean, it just looks so bad. Queen d4, king c6. What if you go queen e3 instead? So when there's king c6, you have knight d4. Oh, this should be mate. I mean, this position must be very bad for black. I think the sacrifice was brilliant. So you played very well, very creative, pushing g6 and then h6, and then this bishop sacrifice on f5. So credits to Luis Roberto for being so creative. This was the most creative game I've seen today. A pity that then you blunder, because this rook g6 and queen takes. You blundered. That's painful, but you did a very good job. So be positive and remember that you played in a very, very impressive way the attack. So let's see round 5. Just a moment. And I'll go for that. If I manage, oh my, I'm clicking here and there. Oh my, what did I do with my board? Okay, let's bring back the... This is where we are. I hope that now you can see it. I made it disappear. Are we here? I think we are here. I'll check the chat just to make sure. I think you can see me again and the board as well. And let's see round 5, because that's what I wanted to talk about. Let's see who I haven't seen lately. Krunks. I want to talk about the game of Krunks. It's against Iber again, so once again I'm talking about Iber's game, but I wanted to see how Krunks is playing. h5, knight e5, h6, g6, f4. And here, maybe b4 is the most interesting, as we have seen in the other game. Bishop b7 too is also interesting, so credits to Krunks for being this creative. We haven't seen this idea, so you guys made it up, you found it on the board. Yes, if f takes e5, then d takes, and black is more than fine. You will regain the piece. I cannot make moves, so f takes, d takes, just imagine that. The knight was pinned on d4, so black will be no piece down a move later. He will capture on d4. Now after queen g2, yes, you are threatening f takes e5, but this knight lands on c4. So this is already a really sharp position, double-edged, just like many or every game in the opposite side castling, basically, unless you are like way ahead of the attack. And oh, Brainboy is saying that he had some work to do, so he had to leave. That's a pity, but thank you for being here for the lesson part of the show. And oh, Konji's asking if there will be any Miss Strategy, Miss Tactics karaoke next week. I'm not sure about that, but yes, we did sing Happy Birthday for Chess 24. I'm not sure that we will sing this time, but we might play some chess. We always have a great time when we are in the studio with Sopiko. We are not only colleagues but best friends, so I can't wait for being in Hamburg with her. Working with her is just awesome. And tomorrow, remember that you have Sopiko's show on the Fire on Board tournament. You should join it because it's gonna be a huge open here on Chess 24 at 8 in the evening Central European Time. Jan Gustafsson and Sopika Gormishvili will both participate and comment live on their games. So join that tournament, it's gonna be awesome. Let me see if there are any other comments, and I will go on with the game commentary. So h5, knight e5. I have already talked about these moves, and after queen g2, knight c4. Yes, this knight is very annoying, so it's a very good idea to kill it. Bishop takes c4 is necessary, because if not, that knight will most likely capture on b2, give a check on a3, capture on e3. Too many threats with that knight, so exchange it, eliminate it. Queen takes, rook f1, you are preparing f5 I believe, but with the queen on g2 it's not easy because the bishop on b7 is a very nice piece. And after b4, knight a4, e5. I like this move because you are trying to create counterplay, not that much on the queen side but more in the center, and that's a good idea with the bishop on b7, the queen on c4, and trying to open the d file for the rook. b3, queen c7, f takes, d takes, and the knight doesn't have this jump to f5 anymore, so in this position it has to retreat. And we have moves like rook c8. Black's position is more than fine, so Krunks, you played this position very well. I think you played the best moves. You took the initiative, and it wasn't easy because the starting position is better for white. I know it's double-edged sharp, but if we played like engines, then this position would be always winning for white. Not winning position, but an advantage for white. So credits to everybody who manages to create counterplay and take the initiative with the black pieces, because from the starting position it's not something that's easy at all. What's surprising me is that after knight a4 you're threatening knight b6, e5. If knight b6 the queen goes back, where should the queen go back? Because I was trying to say that the queen moves, you capture on a8 and the d4 knight is captured, but you have to go to somewhere where it's not captured. So knight b6, if knight b6 here, where do you go with the queen? Because if queen c7, the problem is that after knight takes, the queen is hanging, so white has won a tempo and then can move away the knight. And you don't really have other good squares, I believe, because queen c5 steps into moves like knight f5. So yes, I was praising e5, but it might not have been the best had white played knight b6, which is, if the queen had a good square, I don't know, like on a6, if we could move the queen to a6 in this position, then it would still be okay for black, because the d4 knight is hanging too, but the queen doesn't have any useful squares, so I believe that here knight b6 was winning material. It's a pity that you missed it, Iber. I think it was winning. Maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong if I might miss things too. You know that in such quick rate we all blunder, I think. It's just very difficult to see everything in a second. So this position I like for black. I think black is fine. It's good that you played for this knight b6, knight d5 though, Iber, because you might have something now with this d5 passed pawn and attacking the... Oh, wow, this happened very quickly, yeah. because before the f6 square was protected, so bishop d6. I don't like here much because you allow queen f6 later. Even if it's not a mate yet, I don't want to see the queen on f6. So I would have definitely not moved away the bishop from e7. I know this d5 pawn is annoying, but it cannot be pushed to d6. So bishop d6 was unnecessary, I think, and now bishop f8. This position is, oh, it's already pretty annoying. I know that you have just won this pawn, but still I don't like the queen on that close to our king or on the 6th rank in the position. What happened here? I don't believe this. No, I don't believe it. Mouse slip. Yeah, we don't want to exchange queens because we are pawn down, but after rook d6, what's wrong with moving the rook? Queen c... okay, the bishop is hanging, yeah, I'm blundering. But what about queen c5? I mean, are we lost already? Queen c5 still survives, I believe, or not. Queen c5, queen b7 was annoying, maybe. Oh, but then where else? Maybe after queen e7 you should go to f3 with the queen. Yeah, that was safer. Queen f3, attacking the rook from f3, keeping pressure on the f7 pawn, because here after rook d6 it's already unpleasant. But I don't think it's that unpleasant that you should give up the queen immediately. Anyway, it's just a blitz game, so yeah, I think queen f3 was safer here, and it's a pawn down but very active pieces, and an annoying pawn on h6. But Krunks played very well, I think, this part of this position. I think is nice for black, but what white missed here, I believe, is this knight b6 move, which would have one material, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. Guys, correct me in the chat if that's the case, because these are blitz games, so I don't have much time to analyze or calculate myself. I just say what comes to my mind immediately, what my intuition says. Let's see the game of Chese against Koench, and I will check the chat if there are any comments about the games that I have just talked about, if you have any questions. I think there are no new questions, so I'll keep on talking about the games. And Luis is saying, hi Anna, greetings from Lima, Peru. Well, thank you for following us from South America. The farthest I've been to was Mexico, but I would love to visit South America too. And also, of course, Asia. I've been to China, but I would love to travel around Asia to Australia. I still have plenty of countries to visit. Africa as well. I have never been to Africa. I've been to the States and I really liked it, but I haven't been to Canada. So I have still plenty of countries on the map that I would love to visit, and I hope to visit them in the future. But let's talk about chess. Even if I love traveling and getting to know new cultures, new people, different societies, new languages, learning more languages. h5, knight e5, f4, knight c4. This we have seen. And g6 once again. So this is the same, not the same exactly, because in the previous game we have seen where g6, h takes, h6 was played. That was a very impressive game. And here g takes, f takes happened, and I believe that f takes is better for black. If you have to capture on g6, capture it with the f pawn, because after h6 at least the h5 will not be open, so you are pretty good defending everything with the knight, protecting the h7 square, and the h7 pawn is protecting the g6 pawn. That's why in this position white usually goes for h6, trying to weaken the dark squares around black's king, and not g6, because yes, we are opening files, but at the same time black can keep the g6 pawn pretty much protected, and also this h7 pawn is just blocking the h5, so it's where it is. This is the position I was talking about. Maybe there are some moves like f5. Oh, f5 is actually what Chesa played, so if f5 works, then this position might be like crushing. But I was saying that if black can keep this position closed with a few moves like bishop f6, king g8, bishop g7, okay, few moves. It takes 3 moves, but after 3 moves, black could stabilize this position. So white has to act very quickly if you want to do something and prove that your pawn sacrifice was correct. F5, I believe, is the best move because it opens the diagonal for the bishop. You are preparing bishop h6 and also this pawn on f5. I think this is really annoying, so yeah, maybe then even here g6, f takes h6 is really interesting. Of course, these are the moves that for the engine are almost never the best, but you don't have to listen to the engine. This is a game between humans, so maybe here after h6 what black has to do is bishop f6. Sorry. After bishop f6, if I can catch my breath, after h takes, you want to capture on g7 with the bishop. So this is actually what I wanted to do before. Have the knight on f8, have a bishop on g7, everything under control. And I believe that here black is doing fine in the defense. It's not easy at all to crack this nut. I don't see how can you break through here on the king side with white. That's why usually black doesn't go for this g6, h6 with the knight on f8. So you have to, perhaps instead of bishop e7, you need to go for this bishop f6 and think about the defense that you will want to have the bishop on g7. This fianchetto bishop is brilliant in defending, so if you have the pawn on g6, you do want to have a bishop on g7, knight on f6 or f8. They will protect your king more than any other piece could. I believe that after f8 it was already very difficult. Let's see how the game finished. Knight takes, and you gave up this, you gave up the c3 knight, but the king is, as I like to say, almost naked. There are pawns on h7 and g6, but no defenders, so this was just mate, unfortunately, for Coenge. But I think Coenge, you reacted very well to g6. F takes is the best move. Just make sure that you bring another defender. The f8 knight is not enough, and you don't want to capture on g7 with the king, so you don't want to capture this guy with the king, and white will play h takes g7, so make sure that you prepare for it by playing bishop f6, and after h takes you have bishop takes g7. I think this position is more than fine for black. Everything is under control. Let's see another game. Let's see. Let Me Win has already finished against the PJK. Let Me Win has won. Oh, what happened, PJK? Tell me, please, what went wrong? g6, h takes, f takes, f4, e5. Oh, e5, knight d5. And it's already over, is it? I know it's unpleasant to have the knight on d5, but is it that bad? Yes, it is, because you're losing a piece. Wherever the queen moves, let's just move it somewhere. White will capture on c6, and it cannot be taken because of knight e7. So yes, it was that bad, unfortunately. First I thought it was just the positional way that the knight on d5 is a beast, but it's also winning material because the e7 bishop will be hanging. The queen is overloaded in this position. You cannot take on c6. That's a pity. So after f4, e5 was a blunder, and I'm sure that now you understand it was a blunder. You have to go for any other move, maybe bishop b7, maybe b4, something that doesn't weaken the d5 square, and try to push either b4 or develop with bishop b7. Try to create something on the queen side. That was a quick win. Let me win. You spotted it very well that knight d5 was winning material. What about ABC against Luis Roberto? Because I really like the previous game that I have seen by Luis Roberto. Oh, he's not here anymore, or his connection, something went wrong with his internet connection, because the game is over. What about Freddy? Has he gone as well? No, this game has been played, but so quickly. And wow, what a mate for black. How did that happen? Let's see, word 20, how did you do that? And I want to check quickly the chat if I'm missing any questions or comments. You know that I need to use a second device in order to see the chat. When I'm showing you my computer screen, I cannot be changing between the video page and also the tournament. I cannot have both on the screen. So let's see, h5, knight takes, bishop takes or queen takes, but I like queen takes because we are playing for h6. We want to get mate on g7. e5, queen d5. Queen d5 I don't like, because you are stepping into a tempo. Black will develop his bishop with a tempo, and you know that time is precious. Time is so important in chess, not only on the clock but on the chessboard, so don't give time to your opponent. Queen d5 allows black to develop his piece with a tempo. After bishop e6, once again you have to move the queen. So yeah, after e5, just move the queen anywhere else, not to d5. Also, the d5 square. I think I have talked about this d5 square many times, but I still like to talk about it because that's a hole. Yeah, in the Sicilian, it's normal to have that hole in the position, for instance, in the Najdorf. So black gives up the d5 square on purpose in order to develop his pieces dynamically, to have this bishop on e6. Then at some point, if he can, he would love to push d5. Also, he wants to attack on the queen side, so active play compensates for the structural weakness which is caused by the pawn on e5, backward pawn on d6, and hole, an outpost, a possible outpost on d5. But don't play queen d5, so after e5 you go back with the queen, doesn't matter, queen d2 for instance, and you want to jump to d5 with the knight, so you want to use these holes with knights, or yeah, usually knights. Knights are the best on weak squares. And yeah, just don't give tempo to the opponent. Don't let him win time by playing queen d5 and then have to retreat. So yeah, you played knight d5 later on, but by losing a tempo, so now it means that black has pushed his pawns already on the queen side. That's why time is so important in chess. Rook b8, also a tempo. So queen b5 is a bad move here because it steps into rook b8. Yeah, trying to play bishop b6, but even if you manage that bishop, I mean, if the opponent spots that threat, rook b8 is just a very good move for black. That's where he wants to have his rook. He wants to push a4 and then b3 or a3 or both. Queen d5, rook c8, also good because you attack the c2 pawn. What is g6? Queen takes c2, I understand, is just a check, but I still want to know. King a1, then I capture here. And I capture this guy too. Am I getting mated? I don't see a mate here. Maybe you were afraid of something like bishop c... No, bishop d3. I mean, yeah, you can attack the queen, but I go back. I mean, now that I'm a pawn up, I'm happy exchanging queens. I think it was okay to capture on c2, unless I'm missing something. I think that this g6 push here is not that dangerous because I can capture it with the knight. Of course, if I cannot take it, then it's horrible. Queen f7 is mate. Knight takes g6. On the other hand, I think everything is under control unless I have missed something. Rook c1 is never good because you can take it and then there's a back rank mate with rook c1. So I believe that this was just really good for black. But Word20 played in a different way. Doesn't mean that it's worse. H takes immediately. Yeah, and if now H takes, you capture it with the knight. So you had the same idea, you just didn't want to capture on c2 first. Still good. I think this is good. Black is fine here. Black is a pawn up and pushing pawns on the queen side. So it is black who has the initiative and material advantage. It was material advantage until you sacrifice the rook with bishop after bishop h3, not moving the rook away. It's interesting. But when I'm a pawn up, I like to keep my material advantage. At least that's how I am. Maybe it's only me. Maybe I like too much pawns. I would have moved the rook away. Is that a bad move? Rook b8 and then a3 or b3? I think you have time for it. Were you afraid of bishop f5 maybe? Bishop f5 could be annoying because then where can we go? We have to go back to f8 with the knight. And then it's getting a bit dangerous. Well, more than a bit dangerous. Just let's say rook b8, bishop f5. If knight f8, then this rook comes to h2, a threatening mate on h8. So yeah, it's getting hot in here. Maybe this is bad because after g6, yeah, you're not likely to survive this position. I think there's something going on. This is suspicious, more than suspicious. I will not calculate until the end here. I just know that this is more than suspicious, and maybe that's why you gave up the rooks, and it could be a good idea then to sacrifice an exchange. Still, I like material. Maybe then instead of No, but this is all forced. Bishop h3. Maybe then giving up the pawn with g6 was fine for white because you have this plan of bishop f5. I might be missing something. I know that if I say the first thing that comes to my mind, it's not always the best. a3, bishop takes, so it's a piece and a pawn for the exchange. And this a3 pawn is very annoying. So I know you don't want to normally open files here, but maybe you had to. I know this is very... I know it's ugly. It's really ugly. The problem is that you don't have time for taking the king away from the b file and then bringing back the queen to eliminate this pawn or to bring the rook here because there's queen c3. So no, it wasn't good to capture it. And if you cannot capture it, then it means that it's gonna be so unpleasant after b3. Queen c3 wins the bishop because it's queen b2 mate. Yeah, it was a very good job actually. So what can you do here in this position? Maybe, yeah, it's an exchange down, but black is, if b3, queen c3, if b takes, I don't like it. Maybe white had to go for something like queen b3 in order to have the queen here close to the king, and if a takes b2, well, you either capture it with the king, or you just say that, okay, I keep this pawn on the board, it's a shield, it cannot do anything to me as long as I have the queen here. But still, it could be unpleasant if, I don't know, or let's say king takes. This position is still unclear because if the queen moves away, then black is threatening rook c3, and after that, where can you go with the queen? Then queen a3. It's unclear, so I think that a3 was a very good move for black, and it's really tough to defend this position. I believe you have to try to bring back the queen and cover as many squares as possible with the queen in order to avoid queen c3, but it's not an easy position, I should say that. What about the game of Krunks between Perfect Champion? And I think the tournament has finished because as far as I can see, the six rounds have been completed. Let me see in the chat if there is any comment. Perfect Champion is saying that the last game of mine was really nice. So let's see that game, Perfect Champion. I was just about to talk about it. You won so quickly with the black pieces. Let's see how you did it. h5, knight e5, f4, knight g4, and after h6 you played g6, keeping the position closed. Good job. Bishop d3, b4, and after knight e2, e5. That's very good because if you can counterattack in the center, that's brilliant. Here, e5, we have seen it in other games too. White can never really capture this because the d file opens up, and that means that this rook on d8 is happier than any other piece in this position. Also, the g4 knight is really good, and this position is very active for black, so it is black who has the initiative. After e5, Krunks went knight b3 and a5. Yeah, this is annoying. Pawn storm, but on the other flank and with the other color, b4, now a4, and then b3 or a3. But why did this game finish right here? Perfect Champion, can you explain me what happened? Or Krunks, who resigned and why? Krunks has resigned. Am I missing something? Yeah, a4. Okay, yeah, I understand it. But why did you go rook c1? I mean, I know a4 is annoying, but rook c1 just steps into it because that's a square where you could place the knight. It's an unpleasant position, I understand it. But still, you should try to fight. You should try to do something like f5 maybe. Just try to attack the black king as well and try to do something. If knight takes, queen takes, and if not taking against a4, you still have at least the c1 square for the knight, and if a3, you can try to keep the position closed by playing b3. If b3, you have the knight here, so you can capture it once and take it down with the knight. You still should fight here, and I don't think this position is horrible. I think white is fine here. Of course, I don't want to see those pawns on a4 and b4. I would prefer to see them on a7 and b7. But still, you need to accept the situation that black has gained some initiative. try to defend. You should also learn how to defend games, because you can win half points, you can win full points by learning how to defend when you are being attacked. I think the knight on c1 is more than fine, so keep that square for the knight. And f5, I believe, is interesting. I don't know if it's the best move here. I'm just trying to create something. So a4, knight c1, and maybe if here takes. I don't know, this position is interesting. Black can go for moves like bishop a6. This is, oh, no, not bishop a6. What am I saying? We are threatening f6. That would trap the bishop. I almost forgot to say that because I was so focused on protecting the b1 king that I forgot about the counterattack that I was planning. So f5, f6 is a big threat, so black has to do something about this f5 pawn, either immediately or later, but in this position he has to play something. Yeah, a3 was, or even after a3 perhaps f6 was fine, but I was just worried about these moves, like, am I getting mated? Maybe not. Maybe this was just a ghost that I was seeing, and this is fine for y2. The knight is protecting the a2 pawn, so if queen a5, I might not get mated, and this position should be winning if there's no mate. So just make sure that you, first of all, detect the opponent's threat. So if he's threatening a4, just think ahead, think where